Celtics Beat is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
Welcome in, everyone. This is Celtics Beat. Good. Can I swear here, Ev? Like, what are our company regulations about cursing at this point in time?
Do whatever you want.
I mean, occasionally our guests do it. Like Max comes on, he'll swear. The famous like Bill Chisholm "Don't fuck it up" episode that he had. Like, God damn it! Like, what day did we record with Sean Grandy last week?
It was Friday. We've been doing
Friday.
Friday.
So a week? Let's just call it a week. I mean, obviously it's a weekly show. So ballpark, it's been a week since we last did this. And at that point in time, the Celtics were down 0-2, blowing 20-point leads while shooting 25% from three in each of the first two games of their second round series against the Knicks. And we're sitting here with Grandy and we're putting everything in perspective. And we're saying, can Boston come back? What's it look like? Of course, the Celtics can come back. Vegas still thinks the Celtics can come back. They're going to win this thing in 6, if not 7. Fine. And, all is right in the world. Well, a week later.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. And so we're previewing the Pacers. Ben Valenti, Adam Kaufman, Seth Landman here with it's if I look like I'm incredibly sleep deprived, I am. Blame it on this team. I will still proudly represent their colors and all, but I'm frustrated. It's some for faults of their own, others obviously things that you cannot control, like the future of the franchise being in peril. I mean, I'm obviously overstating it, but there is a lot of uncertainty now going forward that goes well beyond it's hard to repeat, man. 6 straight defending champs have gone out in round 2, but it's on to next year. We don't know what the hell next year is. What we know, or expect anyway, is that Jayson Tatum, outside of sitting there well-dressed on the bench for each of these games, will not be part of it. That is where we are. I know anyone out there watching or listening, you are aware of what is happening with the Celtics, but in the event that you have been on vacation, unplugged, and not in tune with anything, here's what's up. Crap is what's up. Tatum ruptured his Achilles. Famously at the same point in time as his idol Kobe Bryant threw away to go in the fourth quarter of their respective games. But Tatum ruptured his Achilles and obviously was not going to return for the rest of this year. And depending on obviously the medical advances and speed of the recovery, we may not see him all of next year as well. And I think that is the proper way to lean. And of course, the Celtics, who go out, and that happens when they're basically down 3-1. They weren't totally down 3-1, but they were essentially down 3-1 when that Tatum injury happened. And then they emphatically, it was like Cedric Maxwell, get on my back, boys. Jaylen Brown and Derek White and Peyton Pritchard and Luke Cornett game, win game 5, and then go out and almost in a Cavs-esque sort of way, lose without even being competitive in game 6 in New York. And so season over. Future of the franchise in question. That is obviously the main stuff that we are getting into today. But I think, boys, I'm really trying hard not to swear more. We need to begin with this series before we get into all of what is next year. And as Evan mentioned off the top of the show, by the way, we are again powered by CLNS Media. Make sure you do subscribe to the Celtics Beat podcast this on iTunes and Spotify and wherever else you get your podcasts. Beyond that, the CLNS Media YouTube page for all of the Celtics content, all access, the bevy of podcasts and us and everything, the whole Celtics catalog. We thank you for that. Guys, I just want to start here, Seth, and welcome to the show. It's been a while. It's great to have you back here with us. Most of my Twitter feed at this point in time, and I have my thoughts on the series. We can get into that. But most of maybe it's vocal minority, maybe it's majority. I have no idea. Most of the mentions on my social media at this point in time this is on Joe Mazzulla. That is like, you may laugh at that, but that's where I want to begin. There are a lot of people that like want Joe gone. Joe is not up for the challenge. Joe doesn't adjust. Joe is a problem. Joe is, live by the 3, die by the 3, even if it kills you in the worst possible way. I would like you, for our listeners, hell, for Evan and I, let's just have a little Joe Mazzulla reset. I would like you to outline what to you in this series that the Celtics just lost is on Joe, what's not on Joe. What makes Joe a good head coach, what makes Joe a coach who is still young in his career and learning.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like, I think there's a degree to which you could suggest that different adjustments that could have been made weren't made. I mean, to me, the obvious thing that stands out is just playing Porzingis in this series. The team just seemed to look a whole lot better in so many ways when he was on the bench. It seemed like he wasn't well. It seemed like couldn't focus, wasn't really doing the things he does well. So I mean, I guess like if I'm second guessing things, it starts with going away from him earlier, and maybe just sticking with Cornette, maybe trying out Keita or Tillman or whoever. But ultimately, when I look at this series, I see like, in the competitive portion of the series where Jayson Tatum is still playing, the Celtics just kind of like aren't running their stuff. And to me, these turnovers or like indecisiveness in the moment, I guess that's about coaching, but this is a team that succeeded in doing all those things all year. And so it's hard for me to look at that and say like, did Joe's message change or something? I'm not sure. I mean, this team clobbered the Knicks basically every time they played this year. So
and last year.
So I mean, the degree to which I think if Joe was the coach who was presiding over all of that, I don't see why his message would change. To me, it's like the players on the team in like difficult moments in this series looked a lot like the team that lost to the Warriors in the finals a few years ago to me. I think it was just sort of an instance of like reverting to bad habits, in tight moments of the game, walking the ball up the floor and then being up against the shot clock, sort of like running only one action on a play and then sort of panicking when that one action doesn't work instead of just playing and moving the ball. I mean, one thing I do want to come back to is like the idea of taking too many threes. I think, in game one, part of what happened was maybe a perfect storm of like in game one, to me watching that game, it kind of felt like they were getting like the stats back this up that they got like endless wide open shots. And I think when you have sort of nightmare shooting game where you're doing everything you're supposed to do and generating the looks you want to generate and none of it works, maybe that leads to a sort of second guessing yourself. It's so weird to watch a team that just won a championship last year go through that kind of crisis of confidence. So maybe that's why people are lashing out at the coach. But to me, he's a young coach. I wish he'd like maybe be a little less dogmatic about like, this is what I believe and I'm not going to adjust in the moment. But also that kind of stuff tends to work for coaches. There's no secret sauce to this stuff. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, to me, it's like they just won a title playing this exact same way. So, and they've won a cajillion games under Mazzulla playing this way. And, it's nice to have different things to go back to, like but you can't do that for an entire series.
Yeah.
Like you can do a couple of different things maybe to try and generate different shots or try and do this and that. And I'm not saying they didn't try those things, but at the end of the day, Boston won a championship by being the best 3-point shooting team in the history of basketball. And that's what got them to 60 wins in the regular season. It's what got them where they were in the second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs, and it failed them at the worst time. I mean, they had 14-point leads in every single game but the last one. They blew 20-point leads in the first two games. You don't do that by not being up 20 points and things going well. So if you're going to blame Joe for anything, I think the biggest one is the Porzingis thing. And maybe that's Joe being too player friendly, maybe trying to be like, hey, we're paying him $30 million. The Celtics are paying him $30 million. He has to play. We at least have to try this thing. And I give Porzingis credit for trying to battle through it. But, I mean, anybody with eyeballs could see that Porzingis just never really had it at any point in any game, really, this entire postseason. And it's just one of these things where it's like, man, like if they just had him close to whatever healthy looked like for him, we could be singing a different tune right now. But he was, and again, he tried. He went out there, he tried. I'm not here to demean Porzingis because he clearly was 100%. But he was killing them out there all the time. Like, I laughed when some people were like, oh, he blocked a shot and hit a deep three. First off, that three was a dumb shot, a really bad shot, logo three, when he's as ice cold as he possibly could have been. And then after that, people are like, oh, maybe that's the confidence he needs. No, that was just pure luck that he hit that shot. It was in the right place at the right time for that block shot. If you watched him the rest of the game, you know what I watched? A guy that wasn't leaving his feet to grab rebounds and was a liability out there defensively the entire time he was out there. Meanwhile, there are certain points in the game, like Karl-Anthony Towns, who is one of the and look, Cat had a great game, but he's one of the lowest IQ players of all time. I don't know why he was leaving the paint to go guard Porzingis 20 feet away from the basket. I was like, let him shoot that. You want him to shoot. Like, if you leave the basket, it leaves you an opportunity for somebody to make a backdoor cut if somebody want to do that and get an easy layup. But again, I don't blame Joe a ton for this. I think, again, there was maybe like a mandate of like, let's see what Porzingis can give us tonight. That's the biggest blunder of it all, because everybody, including, I don't know, most casual fan, knew that playing Luke Cornett, and it was obviously proven in Game 5, but playing Luke Cornett over Porzingis was something they should have done way earlier in the series and way more of.
Which has its limits. I mean, and I would just add, like, I think it is complicated. Playing Cornett, as we saw in Game 6, maybe has its limits as well. Like, you know, that's a pretty easy player to game plan for. Yeah, I mean, I think the one other thing I would point to is like maybe in Joe's favor has to do with rebounding, because like for both of the last two seasons, for the bulk of the time, this team succeeds by like being a really, really great defensive rebounding team. And I think in moments where they don't do that, I don't think you can blame the coach for that. I think the fact that this team like doesn't have like any really like elite rebounders, like I would say Tatum's the best rebounder on the team, and he didn't play in the last game, the last two games. So like when this team rebounds well, it's because of like system and coaching and like and then player effort. And I think when the player effort or focus on that part of the game goes away, that's when this team really struggles, when they start giving up those offensive rebounds. So that's just the last thing I'd add on that.
There are people out there, I'm sure, who believe you never play Porzingis in this series, or at least after it was apparent that he wasn't even close to what he could have been. You probably win the series. Maybe, maybe not. Who the hell knows? I don't know if people realize Porzingis was probably even worse statistically than he was to the eye over the course of these playoffs. This is a guy who averaged 20 points, 19.5, 20.7 rebounds per game in about 30 minutes during the regular season, shot almost 50% from the field, north of 40% from three. In the playoffs, 11 games between the two series, he started 7. He still played 21 minutes per game, so 2/3 of the time, but he averaged 7.7 points, 4.6 rebounds. Here's where it actually gets ugly. Shot 31.6% from the field, 15.4% from three. 15, down from 40 in the regular season. I think if there is a fair second guess, and you guys brought this up of Joe, it was so apparent. It like, fine, whatever happened in Orlando happened in Orlando. But you get to the Knicks series where, look, I go back a couple of weeks when we were previewing the series. I thought Porzingis was going to have a gigantic series. I thought Porzingis, with his history against New York in a Celtics uniform and elsewhere, his play at MSG, the whole revenge narrative, former team, blah, 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 what he's done against them in the regular season this year. I thought Porzingis, what did I say to Barrett? I thought he was going to be the Celtics' second leading scorer in this series behind Tatum. I thought he was going to be awesome. And it was so clear in game one that he was not a fraction of the guy. And Joe keep rolling him out to the, like, after games. I didn't play him in the second half because he couldn't breathe. He couldn't breathe. Again, I don't know. No one knows what Porzingis has been dealing with from a health standpoint. Seems pretty similar to that. People keep referring back to him missing the stretch of 8 games in March with something similar, what I've affectionately referred to as a bubonic plague here on this podcast. But he was so clearly not himself that, as Ev said, like, this is not like a slight on Porzingis, because again, this was a health thing. Like, you could be one of those, like, Seth, you're not a big Porzingis guy, like, when he's completely right. That's fine. Like, you could be that. This wasn't that. This was like a dude who was incapable of being on the floor. And to me, it felt, I don't think Joe gives a shit what Porzingis' salary is, and let's get him on the floor. I don't think there's any of that stuff. I think it was, I still don't necessarily trust the depth of my bench, Kada, Tillman, too much Cornet, whatever, as I do whatever percentage of Porzingis we're getting. And I think, to the eye, like, if I see it, you see it, Evan sees it, fans see it, Joe has to see it. Joe knows more about basketball than any of us do. So there was a stubbornness there that, he just stuck to it. It's going to turn. Maybe Porzingis behind the scenes is telling him, I'm feeling better today, coach. It's going to turn. And then he gets into the game and it doesn't. I have no idea. But that, above all else in this series, is the most obvious second guess of Joe. Like, you couldn't keep rolling him out there. People were screaming it from the mountaintops, from, like, Monday morning quarterbacking the thing. You couldn't keep putting Porzingis out there. He was hurting you. He had decent defensive stretches at points, never gave you a damn thing offensively. But generally speaking, and you could look at plus minus, he hurt you considerably more than he helped you. And I wish some sort of Cornet-like adjustment, as you brought up, had happened on a more permanent basis earlier in the series. And I do think we would have gotten a different looking series, because I said it, I don't know how many times, guys. I still said it. I said it after the game ended last night. I tweeted it. Just one more jab needle at Knicks fans. The Knicks aren't the better team. The Celtics are the better team. The better team isn't always the better team in a series or in a moment, but if we're talking about depth of the roster, top to bottom, looking at the team, when you have an available Tatum, obviously, even if you don't have Porzingis, I still believe the Celtics are the better team, but they weren't the better team when they had to be, guys. Late in games, holding on to leads, resilience, never quitting, all of these things, some of which are a little cliche, wanting it more, whatever you want to call it. Like, I think the Knicks are going to go down probably in 6 games to the Pacers. I think that much of Indy, I think that little of New York, and it just pisses me off that we're even sitting here in this situation.
How do you really feel? I mean, like, the Celtics, I don't know. It's like that in some ways the Tatum injury made this thing feel a little less intense to me. Like, once he goes,
they were down 3-1.
Yeah, they were down 3-1. I mean, like, yeah, it allows you to forget that a little bit in a certain way. It's like, where were they going anyway? But and with him, I agree. Like, I think this team probably has to, like, assume they would have lost the series with Tatum, which means taking a really hard look in the mirror that goes, like, way beyond, like, Porzingis's health and Mazzulla's decision to play Porzingis. Like, I think, like, even independent of that decision, yeah, maybe if they, like, excise him from the rotation, they find a way to win the series. But, like, what happened, and it's hard to, like, it's hard not to take that as, especially heading into this offseason with this payroll and, like, the team building constraints that come with having this payroll. I'm sure we'll get into this, but, like,
of course,
yeah, I think it's time to take a really hard look at this team, which is crazy to say 1 year after winning a championship. I did want to just say, it reminds me a little bit of what's going on with the Nuggets and Russell Westbrook right now. Just to maybe this is to Joe's credit. Like, there might be a way of looking at this where it's like, maybe the options that are on the bench actually aren't really trustworthy or able to play. And, like, you just kind of have to, like, every game you have to kind of, like, give it an honest chance of seeing what you have with this guy. Cause it's it's mysterious enough that maybe he'll be good. And trying that out is your best chance to win, which I think is what Denver's coaching staff is doing with Russell Westbrook right now. And like, in some games it's clear that he doesn't have it and they pull him and they put in Julian Strother and he wins a game for them, but
Right.
which is awesome. But like, what is Julian Strother going to do that in game 7? We'll see. Right. Like,
I have to.
I think I'm sure the Nuggets are going to feel like, whether just because it worked in game 6 doesn't mean they like can just not try out Russell Westbrook in game 7. The truth is they probably need him. And so I wonder if that's a part of it too.
I think the people that are like Kata would have made a difference are insane.
Yeah,
I think you're crazy. I think you should have played Kata more. I'm like, at what point do you think, look, Kata's an active energy guy, but like he is a mess out there and you want him to play big minutes against the Knicks because he can kind of rebound sometimes. I think that's nuts. The only thing on the playing more Cornet when Tatum was healthy, if you look at 2-man combinations in the NBA, Tatum and Cornet have the second highest offensive rating in the entire league. So, I mean, just throwing that out there. But
That's fair.
But like, again, that Russell Westbrook point is a good one because it's like, well, we have to try. We have to see, because when it's good, it can really swing a game for you. Like you have moments, and like you have moments within the same game where like, oh, this is good, Russ. Thank God Russell Westbrook showed up today. And then 3 minutes later, like, oh my God, I can't believe Russ is still in this game. It can happen in the same game. It happens all the time. And with Porzingis, like when you take your third best scorer and he just is a complete shell of his former self, I think we were all maybe kidding ourselves that Boston could have gotten through this thing with that. I think when we had Grandy on that Friday, he did mention Kaufman, like, if you take these two teams and you line them up healthy, like, yeah, the Celtics have a better roster. But, like, let's take out Sam Hauser for a little bit. Let's make Porzingis, like, almost unplayable because of what the health he was going through. And now you start to look at the top 6, and you're like, wait a minute, it's a little bit closer than maybe we wanted to admit when this series started. Because, as much as the Celtics creamed the Knicks in the regular season, when you look them up and you start to like, okay, Porzingis is not their 3, now he's like their 7. So now you're bumping everybody up. The rosters are a little bit closer than I think we wanted to admit at that time, personally.
So I think there are enough other shows out there. I mean, there's enough time from us too, but there are enough other shows out there that are doing your series recap. Oh my God, the season's over. They're, now we have months of what happens next. And let's start the process, guys. Let's start the healing process, the therapy session here. I wish it were as simple as saying, okay, you win banner 18, the chase for banner 19, going back to back. Damn, it's hard to do. Didn't pan out, but on to next year, let's try and make it 2 out of 3. I don't think, the craziest thing here is that we are going to enter next season with a lot of people looking at this team saying, wow, okay, Boston's not a contender for the first time in a little while. And I think it will be honestly surprising if we're going into the year and people are saying the same things they were going into this year, that the Celtics, they're right there in the banner 19 conversation. Part of that is obviously there are a lot of really good teams around the NBA, when it comes to parity, not, you don't have like parity across the league, but in terms of being top heavy, there are absolutely some teams to be taken very, very seriously. Some young teams, some up and coming teams, even if the Thunder do get knocked out by the Nuggets this year, let's say, as long as there's no devastating injury for them, OKC's going to open next year as the favorite to win the championship, that type of thing. The Celtics, we don't have a clue what this roster is going to look like. And Ev alluded to this before, Seth as well. There's your core payroll is about $200 million. This team, well, the team is what right now about $20 million over the second apron. So that's, we won't go into all the nitty gritty of what that means if you get stuck there and the, draft pick effects and obviously luxury tax bill and the bill that, Chisholm and his group would be footing, because it's not going to happen. They're going to get below it. They're going to get below it. And what does it look like in doing so? I think there are a lot of people. We've been texting about this plenty, guys. I don't know if you could get some sort of a disabled player exception for Jayson Tatum if they are certain he's going to miss all of next year. But I heard Forsberg say this on the post-game show. Even if you get that, because of how much money he makes, you're maxing out at the mid-level exception. So you're not getting like, an over-the-top, like go replace him with a star kind of money. You're getting this won't happen, but like in Forsberg's dream world, you're getting the, like, can we trade and bring back Rob Williams kind of like player into like salary-wise, that type of thing. As it relates to the current makeup of the roster, though, like to me, everything's on the table. I realize. I don't think, and we can talk about this, I don't think Jaylen Brown is going anywhere, but I do want to have that conversation. I really don't believe Derek White's going anywhere. In fact, I feel more strongly about that than I even do Jaylen. But after, and I don't think Peyton Pritchard's going anywhere. But after that, Porzingis, he's going to be an expiring contract. So maybe that increases the likelihood that he is back, but he is certainly someone they'd be willing to flip. I think Drew Holiday is almost certainly gone, hopefully for his sake onto another contender and try and get that third ring. But I think you could still get something for him. I think Sam Hauser, as much as I love him, given what he makes and the effect on, again, luxury tax, he could be on his way out the door. And that's all before, is Al Horford retiring or are you re-signing him? Are you bringing back Luke Cornett? I'm sure you'd love to, but can you? Has he been priced out? Is he going to get more money elsewhere? So these are all things, Seth, that are on the table. If you are looking into your crystal ball right now, and I will say there's no one I trust more than Brad Stevens and Mike Zarin and that group to orchestrate all of this. They have proven trustworthy in their time leading this team as a unit. What are they going to do? What do you believe is most likely between now and training camp?
Yeah, I mean, I think your point about that they're gonna cut costs in some way. I don't like saying they're gonna get below XYZ. Like I don't. It's really hard to like make those determinations at this point.
You don't think they get below the second apron?
I think they get below the second apron.
That's what I'm talking about.
I think it's going to be so tricky to do this. Like if you start looking at how you cut costs right now with contracts on the books, it's like they're going to have to find teams to trade with who can take back these salaries. And if you're trying to bring some value back, that gets really tricky. I think a good way to think about this is like, under the old rules, the penalty for going like way, way, way over the tax was just financial. So if you had an ownership group that's willing to eat that money, like Steve Ballmer has been willing to do with the Clippers, like there's like some minor roster building constraints that come with that, but not really. Like you can aggregate salaries, you can do all the things you need to do to try to build the team, whether you're over that money or not. I think sort of remove the money from the equation, assume ownership is like willing to pay for a team that's a contender, and just think about like the team building constraints that come with this. And I think if you imagine Tatum's not playing next year and that this team kind of can't compete for a championship next year, which I don't know. I mean, maybe we're going to learn more over the next couple of days that it could be 9 months. Like we're hearing like inklings that he could be back for the playoffs. My guess is none of that's going to happen, but so if they think about next year as a lost season, it actually makes some of these like cost cutting moves that have to happen maybe a little easier to stomach. And it maybe becomes a little easier to think about how to build a contender for 2 years from now. So I think like in some ways, maybe this is like cleaner than it could have been otherwise. But yeah, to me, the most logical thing to do here is to try to build a team around Tatum and Derek White. Derek White, who's like maybe the only other player on the roster who's actually like underpaid for what his quality is. Jaylen Brown's a great player, but I don't think you could say he's underpaid. I think you'd say he's like even at his huge numbers, probably fairly paid. I think there would be teams that would be interested in him around the league at that money. But Derek White, you could like, if Derek White was on the open market, you could argue he'd get more than what he's currently making. And so to me, it makes sense to try to like get what you can for these other guys, see what happens, and like spend a year. Maybe that's not tanking exactly, but it's like developing talent, seeing what you have with some of these young pieces you have. You got 2 like decently valuable draft picks in this coming draft. See what you get out of those. And then I don't know, have you guys been paying attention to these inklings that they've been like interviewing prospects at the combine? They interviewed Trey Johnson and Cooper Flagg. Like they're clearly sniffing around the possibility of maybe trading into the lottery in some way. And so to me, that makes me think that Jaylen Brown, like I found myself on the trade machine looking at like Jaylen Brown to the Hornets ideas this morning, just because like, why are they interviewing Trey Johnson? It just makes no sense to me. So I think cost cutting moves are definitely happening. And I think you're right to look at Porzingis and Holiday first. But I think if you're looking at like really creative, big ways of like planning for like a future in some way, I think Jaylen's the piece you have to be looking at.
Hold on to that for a second, because I just mentioned that just a little reminder that you got to make sure you subscribe to Celtics Beat on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure, in addition to that, you subscribe to CLNS Media on our YouTube page, Celtics CLNS All Access. Not only just Celtics stuff, Red Sox stuff, Bruins stuff, Patriots stuff. Patriots guys are going crazy this offseason with content. Those 2 guys, Mike and Taylor, are just doing insane. I mean, they're like literally every day, like doing stuff. I got to tip my cap to those boys. So just make sure you subscribe to all the CLNS YouTube channels, because we're all over everything when it comes to Boston sports. To get back to the trading Jaylen thing, out of all the guys in this series, and especially the last 2 games, like I just can't imagine trading that guy, because he's the only guy that really showed up. And I know people are going to kill him for his performance, falling out of game 6. To me, he was the only guy that wanted to even really be there. It looked like to me, in the first quarter, he had it was one point. It was Jaylen was like 3 of 6 from the field for 7 points, and the rest of the team had 2 points, and they were like 1 of 9. And Jaylen was at least trying to do some stuff and just waiting for the rest of the team to join him, and they never did. And so I kind of felt bad for the guy who was trying to leave it all out there. He was magnificent in game 5. I mean, probably, even though he won the Eastern Conference Finals MVP and the Finals MVP, it might have been his best all-around basketball game in any capacity for Jaylen Brown. And absolutely. I know he's going to have probably the most value if you're looking to get a giant haul of things. But like, man, I just can't stomach seeing that guy play for anybody else, considering it just felt like he's the only guy that gave a shit at the end of the season, and that means something to me. And he's been through a bunch of battles, and and he's so seasoned by all these playoffs, series that he's had over the years. Like, I find that extremely valuable. And as you're rebuilding stuff and you're trying to fit in new pieces, it's going to be hard to find guys with that type of experience in these types of games. Like,
real quick. It's tomato, but everything that you said post Eastern Conference and NBA Finals MVP, every other descriptor you just used of Jaylen Brown, we probably said word for word about Marcus Smart before he was dealt away. You know what I mean? So I just, at a certain point, and I think this is Seth's point, like, value's value. You don't just trade him to trade him, obviously, but what could you get in return? So, like, Seth, you were again, like, you were texting us I could pull up the text, but you were texting us the other day with all of these like Jaylen, theoretical trades, like who says no, all that. Like, what to you? Because I mean, it's all well and good to interview guys who are going to be drafted in the first 2, 3, 4 picks. I'd be shocked if that happens. So let's just take that out for Boston. Yeah. In terms of guys that are currently in the NBA, and I know every player you're about to mention is lesser than Jaylen Brown on the, like, if you're doing an NBA player ranking hierarchy, that kind of thing. But if in terms of, like, here's the value back coupled with, this guy, that guy in the package, or these draft picks or whatever, and you're unloading salary at the same time, like, what to you, is there something you could get for Jaylen Brown that would not only make you content, but, dare I say, happy? Something you could actually get behind when, then the following year putting this player or package of players with Tatum and White and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to look at teams that would be interested in Jaylen Brown. So like teams that can fit that huge contract on the books and maybe like would want to like have him be the best player on their team and build around him in some way. What you'd get back, I mean, like, so to me, again, like what I'm looking for is 2 years from now, and I'm looking for, can I like can I like clear a little bit of money in the deal, have maybe like a big expiring contract and a young player on a rookie contract kind of thing, or like someone who's signed an extension. So like the names I was texting you were names like Denny Avdia or Trey Murphy from the Pelicans, like those are like Avdia on the Trailblazers or Murphy on the Pelicans. Like those are teams that also have like big expiring contracts next year. So like in those deals, maybe there's a way for the Celtics to like save a couple $1,000,000. And remember, every $1 million they save, if they're like in the luxury tax as a repeater tax team, is going to be like $6 million or $5.5 million or something. So can they save a little money, get a young player on a really good like long-term contract who can make it easier for them to build around Tatum after this injury, and then have money that comes off the books after next year, or like expiring contracts that then can be like retraded. So I was thinking something like Trey Murphy and CJ McCollum, or I forget what the one I had with the Blazers.
Yeah, there were others. I'm not looking at you because I'm scrolling back through I'm trying to find in my phone some of what you were texting.
But yeah, I think those are like those kinds of players. Maybe other players on like I was looking at Detroit. Like maybe would Detroit be like interested in Jaylen Brown? Would that be enough to like to
here are some that you mentioned. Okay. Jaylen Brown for Derek Lively and the Kyrie expiring contract. Who says that?
That's my funniest one.
Jaylen and Drew to New Orleans for number 7, Zion and CJ.
Yeah.
Van Vliet and Reed Shepherd for Jaylen. Who says no?
I'm surprised you didn't put Tari Eason in there, because that's our guy.
Well, Van Vliet's an interesting one, because Van Vliet, I think I can't remember this for certain, but I feel like there might be some sort of like non-guarantee on his contract, or it's a team option next year. So like that could be a way, like if there's a way to do that. I actually don't know that if there's a way to do that, like before you have to like do something with his option, but maybe there's a way to save money there. So like,
I mean, well, I was going to say an important thing to remind people of, Ev, is, like Brad, like we always talk about Danny Ainge as this like, business first, there's no emotion, all that, like he would have traded Larry and McHale and all that. Like Brad's really no different. Brad just doesn't talk the same way. Like Brad, works in the shadows, obviously, but like, he loved Marcus Smart. He was emotional, like crying on the podium practically about trading Marcus Smart, but he did it. And when many of us wouldn't have. I didn't like that deal at the time. One thing if it was Brogdon instead, but it was Smart. I wasn't behind that deal until you brought in Drew anyway, and it made sense. He traded away Kemba, which I'm not saying you should have kept Kemba, but that was a guy that Brad was very, very fond of. Rob Williams, another one, obviously. Like there are a lot of these guys that are, seemingly, you can say what you want about them on the floor, but just as people, they're like really important to Brad. And so Brad, overlooked the personal and looked at the professional, what are we getting from them on the floor? What's the injury history or what have you? And he executed the move with no regret. And so, there are a lot of people that, would not trade Jaylen Brown. I think there are other people that would drive him to the airport. It all depends on, sort of how you feel in the moment and what series you're coming out of, or how many turnovers or jump in the air and lose the ball or what have you. But to
be clear,
I get like everything is on the table. I would not, like, there is no one on this team that is untouchable other than Jayson Tatum. And there's no one that I think Brad would be like overly sentimental about dealing, like to the point where he wouldn't do it. Like we know who Jaylen is as a person, what he has done for this community. Like that dude, like take away the basketball, and obviously he is a top 20 player in the league anyway, and an all-star and all this, all that. Like Jaylen Brown is an excellent basketball player. He is, for all of his non-basketball reasons, that's the kind of dude you'd like to have be a Celtic for life. We love Jaylen Brown. All I'm saying is Brad would do it if the right package was there.
Well, and he would do it if it means if he determines that it's the only way to build a contender around Tatum down the road. So yeah, and if he thinks that the best way to do that is to focus on Tatum and Brown together, maybe that means trading Derek White. Actually, that's where you could get to the point where you start thinking about moving White. I just think, it can't just be cutting costs alone and having a talent drain that happens as a result of that isn't going to make this team a contender in 2 years. But if you can if there's a way to seize on this moment, this sad, miserable moment heading into next year, what could be a lost season next year, if there's a way to seize on that as an opportunity to do something that makes it contending more likely in the following season, I think you have to look at that. And to me, those deals, if there's a way to bring in somebody who could be the third best player on a title team who's on a reasonable contract for the next couple of years, that's what led me to thinking about guys like Trey Murphy or Denny Avdia or players of that ilk. I mean, with Detroit, I was gonna say before we moved on, could you get Jaden Ivey or Osar Thompson? These are teams that could really use Jaylen Brown next year, and could fit him into their salary structure.
Yeah, that's the problem, is you need a team that can fit that, because the way that the trades work now with the second apron stuff is really difficult. And we sit here trying to pontificate over what could happen. This is actually, that's why having Mike Zarin around is going to be a huge asset to this team, because it's going to be very, very, very difficult to make trades. And this is the one thing, I just can't believe that people agree to this particular CBA, because this is going to be really hard for teams to keep teams intact, really difficult, unless you have ownership willing to spend, and there just aren't that many owners around that have pockets like that.
Even if they are, it's just you're so constricted on what you're allowed to do. If somebody gets injured, you have no options to replace them. It really goes way beyond just having deep pocketed owners at this point. That's what's so crazy about this new CBA.
It's crazy because, again, it's so restrictive on all these things that teams can do. And we've said it a cajillion times, and everybody said it. It's making having a dynasty really difficult in the league. And right now, I'm not sure if that's good or bad for the NBA, because the NBA thrives when the Warriors are killing everybody, when LeBron goes to Miami, when you have the Celtics in Lakers in the 80s with these ridiculous teams. Michael Jordan, the Bulls, was maybe the best thing that ever happened to the NBA. You have dynasties that make up huge, huge memories for everyone because of the engagement that they get. And now you're killing that. And everybody on this podcast is obsessed with Nikola Jokic. He is one of the best players anybody has ever seen. And yet, he's going to maybe win one title because of the way these salaries are lining up and the way that teams can build because of the restrictions.
Are you real quick, Ev? I won't ask Seth. I know how Seth feels about this. He's a big Nugget, almost as big a Nuggets fan as he is a Celtics fan. Are you rooting, Ev, for Jokic and the Nuggets over the Thunder simply because sort of feel like the Thunder's window is just starting, and Jokic, obviously, it's hopefully it's not closing, but it's probably closing. And he just feels like one of those guys that shoot, he's got to win two, right? One is not enough for that dude.
I mean, look, he should win his fourth MVP, which is insane. He is only, competed for one title because he,
a lot of injuries
and all that stuff. It would cement him, because a lot of us, and Seth is probably the champion of all three of us in terms of this category. There are a lot of us out there that are you guys, if you don't understand, this guy's a top 12 player of all time. It's just because you're so busy getting engulfed in ring culture that you can't see that this guy is literally one of the most talented people in the history of basketball to play this sport. Mm-hmm. And because we're so obsessed with how many rings guys win, that we're losing the forest through the trees here a little bit, that this guy is
like dropped from a different planet. Like he's 7'2", is an absolute monster of a person, but also plays point guard, doesn't care about scoring at all, would rather just do all the other stuff that it takes to win basketball games. And if he has to do the thing where he goes on, and scores all the time, he'll do it, but he doesn't really want to play that way. He's a genius. And he's unlike anything we've seen since like Bill Walton. Like he's just unique. And it would cement his place in NBA history of if he just got one more. Because like, yeah, there are guys that have won one before, but like to win two is a different. That's what made this Celtics season so crucial. Like, yeah, the Jays got their one, but if they win two, it puts them in a different place. And Jokic deserves to be there.
Kaufman, you brought up you like mentioned the Spurs in that aside. And I actually think that's another, as we think about like how the Celtics could be thinking heading into this offseason, I actually think that Spurs dynasty, like the end of that Spurs dynasty with Duncan, could be kind of instructive. I mean, like I always go back to when they traded for the pick that became Kawhi, when they gave up George Hill to get Kawhi. That's like a trade that not a lot of teams would have done. Like George Hill, it's hard to remember this now, but he was awesome. Like at the time. Really good player. The Spurs loved him, and they gave him up because they saw an opportunity to get like a little more talent for less money, like that could benefit them. Probably not the next season, but like in subsequent years down the road. And it led to them winning a title after not winning one for a whole decade. And obviously, like the Kawhi experiment didn't end well for them, but like they did get a ring out of that. And I think like, it could feel like, oh, of course the Celtics like won't trade for a draft pick or like won't give up like someone who's currently a great player to sort of retool down the road. But I think when things happen so fast in the NBA, and like in 2 years is a long time away from now. And I think I'm hoping Brad is thinking about it in those terms. And I'm sure he is. Like, how can I maximize, like, taking what's the phrase, like making chicken salad out of chicken, like I think that's how they have to be looking at it.
Well, the thing that sort of gets me the most excited, and this could be a higher caliber guy but not yet an all-star that a Jaylen Brown is involved in, or something lesser, and obviously you're getting something lesser in return, but like I keep going back to something like the, Derek White, Josh Richardson trade. You know what I mean? Yeah. And which, even for the first year of Derek White's time in Boston, there were a lot of people who thought that was a bad trade. I think everyone understands at this point in time how good a trade it was, now. But, looking back, there were doubters at the time. There were skeptics even in real time for a little while. I don't know if it was fluky, and maybe it was. Especially when you look at the return versus the cost now versus then. But that's the thing that sort of gets me all pumped in a, I won't call it a rebuild, but a reconstruction of this roster is, what Brad's eye for talent, or Zarin or Austin or everybody involved, obviously, but like Brad's the figurehead, so we use Brad. Brad's eye for talent and just identifying he's not there yet, but this is what I think he could be, and how he fits into this roster, like you said, 2 years down the road. What can we build him up to next year to where he's where we need him to be when Jayson is back healthy, and we can get to this in a moment, and we're all of a sudden in that Banner 19 conversation again. That's the thing that fascinates me about this offseason, because honestly, like, it was going to, Tatum never gets hurt, they lose in the second round or maybe in the conference finals. It was always going to be a fascinating offseason because of the need to strip down some of your salary. But the potential overhaul that is coming was not on the table before, because before you were still thinking about, regardless of what happens this year, we intend to be in the championship conversation next year.
Yeah.
Now, maybe they intend to be, but it's probably not gonna be. So what does it look like in a couple of years, to your point?
Yeah. I mean, Yeah, I think it's really this is a miserable time as a Celtics fan, but like you sort of like take that hit and then suddenly you're living life again as a Celtics fan. And it's like, I am finding myself kind of excited to see what they do with this situation, because it's just like not a situation we've been in a few years where they have an opportunity to do sort of drastic, radical things with the roster.
Guys, we've only got about 5 more minutes. I want to hit on this with both of you. And it's really a longer conversation, but it's one that we're going to have, I don't know how many times over the next year and change. So let's just start it now. How concerned are you that Jayson Tatum, Ev, I'll start with you, is not going to be the same guy when he comes back?
Extremely. I mean, you need a top 5 player to win the league at this point. And they have one, or they had one. And I don't know. We don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty here about this injury and how he looks when he comes back. And there's a lot of positives, obviously, but we won't know until he plays. But if they don't have Tatum as top 5 guy, then life gets significantly harder. There's only one 04 Pistons. You know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot of those teams around. So, they need Tatum to be Jayson Tatum, and it helps that he's 27 and all these things. But at the same time, we'll see. It's just going to be what it is. And I'm nervous as a Celtics fan. I'm sure we all feel somewhat similar.
Yeah. I mean, to Evan's point, I think like a lot of people would quibble even with the idea like that you can win without someone who's like been an MVP or will be an MVP. Like, I think Tatum was like sort of right on that line. And that's why it's not like someone like Jokic getting 5% worse. It's like if Tatum gets 5% worse, he's like, is he a top 10? Is he top 20 even at that point? And so I think there's like, you hear good things about the way Achilles surgeries have changed over the last 5 to 7 years. Like, they're getting better all the time. Tatum's so much younger than like the last few guys this has happened to. But then there's also like scary ones like, Brandon Jennings, for example, is a player we've all forgotten about, but he was still really young when this happened and wasn't like a terrible player, and he was just never the same. And so, I mean, I have no question. Like, it sounds like they're very happy with how the surgery went. I have no question that Tatum's going to like attack the rehab in whatever way is like the most optimized way to do that. Like, I think the right people are on this task, but you just never know with this stuff, like how he'll come back. I will say he's big and strong and is a good shooter. And like all those things like bode really well for his ability to like still be a great player after this.
And I think the previous, it shouldn't be relevant, but it feels relevant. I think the previous durability, that he had, to this is, I mean, how many times has the guy ever missed consecutive games in his career, let alone a season, obviously. So I think that comes into play. I mean, obviously we've tweeted about it. We've talked about it, not here on the show. Your poster child for best case example is Kevin Durant. And, he was 3 years older than Tatum. There was already in the couple of years before that ruptured Achilles, which they called a calf at the time, a history of him missing games. His previous durability had started to wane a little bit. And then obviously that happens and he's missed so much time since over various stops. But when he has been out there, he's been largely the same player that he was prior in, mostly as you pointed out, because of his shooting ability. Some quibble at the level of explosiveness and that type of thing that was there prior versus after. So that's one of the things. I mean, I guess on the
bright side, Jayson Tatum's only 19 years old.
Right. I mean, that is one of those things, though, with Tatum that I get. This is not going to come out the right way. So I hope people understand what I'm saying when I say this. But you don't look at him and watch him like, obviously he is a superior athlete. Like, he's in the position that he's in. He's as successful as he is for all of the, of course he's a great athlete, but you don't look at him in the same, like you look at like a John Morant, you say freak athlete, right? You don't look at Jayson Tatum and say freak athlete. And I think in this particular situation, that actually benefits him because some of those things that a quote unquote freak athlete would lose with this type of injury. Tatum doesn't. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. I think his game is predicated on like skill and space and like footwork and things like that. And so and maybe this injury encourages him to focus on those parts of his game even more. I mean, so yeah, we'll see.
Have any parting thoughts?
Sad, but you know, it is what it is.
This sucks.
Life will go on, and
Yeah.
you know, again, it's just really about Tatum's health and what he looks like. I've enjoyed watching this iteration of the Celtics very much.
Yeah,
a lot of winning, including a title.
Thank God.
It's sad it has to come to a close, and they're going to lose some really great guys in the process.
Yeah.
So just thankful for the fact that we got to cover this team for the past 2 years, and they were just absolutely blowing the doors off people, and were a hell of a lot of fun. And I just hope that there's another version of this coming up in 2 years. It'd be really kind of cool, but we'll see.
There's a movie reference that's escaping me right now. Like, what was it? Was it like Horrible Bosses or one of those? Like, we lost a lot of good people out there.
That's Wedding Crashers. Buddy.
Wedding Crashers. Thank you. Yeah, I knew it was a comedy anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a really interesting offseason, and I am excited to talk about it. I just wish we were, a little more full speed ahead for this coming season. All right, well, we got to wrap, boys. So, in a word, before we go, who's the champion? Predict it now.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say the Thunder just because maybe Aaron Gordon's hurt.
I'm gonna still give it to the Nuggets. I'm gonna give it to the Nuggets. See what happens. All right, boys. I'll tell you what. Whoever it is, watch that Game 7 between OKC and Denver because it's going to be one of those two teams. It's not going to be Indy, New York, or Minnesota. All right, for Seth Landman, for Evan Valenti, I am Adam Kaufman. We thank you all. Reminder to subscribe not only to the Celtics Beat podcast, but the CLNS Media YouTube page. Some episodes have been more fun than this one. I won't say it's been fun, but it's been a little bit of a therapy session anyway. And there's a lot in front of us in the weeks and months to come, years surrounding this team as they get back to where we all thought they were about a week ago anyway. So thanks for being with us, watching, listening, however you are finding us. We will talk to you again next week.